Jeff, let's keep the football talk going. Get somebody from Arizona joining us, senior NFL writer for Andscape and author of Rise of the Black Quarterback, What It Means for America. Jason Reid joins the show. Jason, I've been following along your Twitter feed. Did you end up seeing Rick Ross the other night?
I actually did wind up seeing Rick Ross. I took my girlfriend and had a very good time. It was with all these Super Bowl parties and events, you realize that these headliners, these big acts, aren't going to be out there very long. They just do what they have to do to fulfill the obligation. But we got about 15 minutes with Rick Ross, so it wasn't bad.
So when you see all the commotion that goes on out there, do you appreciate how hard it must be for these athletes to get to this city and focus on the job at hand?
Well, the thing is for them, like they're away from all of it, and they have police escorts when they have their media availability. The buses get to go, back and forth, and it's the Super Bowl week is really for all the fans and for all the NFL's corporate sponsors, for NFL executives. So their experience is so much different than the players. I mean, their experience is so much different than everybody else here. It's almost like it's almost like they're in two separate worlds.
So it may be for the corporate sponsors there, but the story is more for the nation in terms of some of the narratives that are there. As the man who wrote the book, you've been out there this week. You've talked to people like Warren Moon. You've talked to these quarterbacks. Their combined ages are 27 and 24. They'll be the youngest pair of opposing quarterbacks. The first time two African-American quarterbacks will start a game. More than the game on the field, what does this mean off the field that these two men will lead their two teams on Sunday?
Well, anytime in America you have a situation where a barrier falls, whatever the barrier may be, whatever a hurdle is cleared, it's significant, especially when you talk about the first person or the first people to achieve something. And we've had African-American quarterbacks, black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl before, but it is significant that for the first time ever, you have two in the same game, and not just two quarterbacks, but Patrick Mahomes just won a second MVP award in 5 years. He's only been starting for 5 years. Jalen Hurts has shown that all of these thoughts about him not being a quarterback were so off base that they looking back on it, those comments haven't aged very well. And you see these two guys now in a game where they're leading the best two teams in the league by record wise, and it's another achievement for a group historically in the country. I mean, when you talk about the history of America, that has been behind in terms of the founding of the country, and just where we are at in terms of race. So a lot of people will say, hey, look, why do we have to keep talking about this? Can't we just celebrate them as being great quarterbacks? And we can. But this is an accomplishment for a group that was once the most marginalized group in the NFL, black quarterbacks. So to get to this point with two superstars, and look, Jalen Hurts now qualifies as a superstar. With two superstars who are both young black men, it is an achievement, and it's another barrier that's fallen.
With these two particular quarterbacks, how important is how they were raised and the parents that were supportive of them? How does that play into the story?
Well, I think it's a big part of the story. You look at Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes, his dad is black. He's a former major league pitcher, and his mom is white. And I love what he says about it, that he identifies as being a black man and a black quarterback. But his mom is white, and he loves that part of his heritage too. And he looks at it like, hey, when you see who I am, it's just something that opens up possibilities for more kids to say, hey, look, he's done this, so I can do this too. Comes from a very strong family, and then Jalen Hurts, clearly, his dad is a coach, and he instilled in Jalen a lot of these things that you see Jalen excel at now. I just to tell you guys a little story. I think a lot of people know that at the combine, the year Jalen entered the draft, he was asked repeatedly by reporters, are you willing to change positions to play in the NFL? And I was off to the side during his media availability. I was standing there, and I just thought to myself how composed this young man was at the time, because I don't think I would have handled all those questions, as well as he did. Now remember, he finished third in the Heisman Trophy voting coming out of Oklahoma that year. Everybody knows that he lost the starting job at Alabama to Tua, but he stayed and he helped them win another national championship. He went to Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley and showed he was a better passer. And so to get presented with those questions and the way that he was presented repeatedly, I thought to myself, he's handling this very well. So, I look at this and I look at these two young men, and I look at how composed they are and how they give thoughtful responses to their questions. I mean, I think upbringing is important in anything in life, in terms of like providing a foundation for people to succeed. And clearly both of these young men have great foundations.
Yeah, they seem like they're superstar people more than just superstar players in terms of the way that they do things in the community, the way they give back. And you spoke for your book with Patrick Mahomes. He was immensely helpful to you with the book in terms of how open and honest he was on a variety of issues on and off the field. You were able to see him get his second MVP award last night. Sure, Eagles fans will be upset that Jalen Hurts only got one MVP vote. But
he did finish second.
He did finish second. He did finish second. And look, for the Super Bowl, the last bunch of years, the person who won the MVP didn't win it. So if you're an Eagles fan, you'd prefer not to win it and win the game. But talk to us about Patrick Mahomes, the player that you see on the field, what you expect to see out of him on Sunday, and then the man that helped you build this book.
It's funny. On Twitter, I took a lot of heat recently because I said that Patrick isn't yet an all-time great. And what I meant by that is, look, he's a generational talent. There's no question about that. But when I think of all-time greats, I have to quantify achievement. And it's not that he's not an all-time great because he hasn't achieved anything. It's just that he doesn't yet rank among the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history in terms of achievement. He's got 2 MVP awards now. If he can pull off another Super Bowl victory, well, now we're talking more about, okay, all-time great in terms of achievement. But when I think of quarterbacks in the history of the game with achievement, obviously Brady's at the top. He's got the 7 Super Bowls. He's got MVP awards. You have to look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who only has 1 Super Bowl title, but he has 4 MVP awards. So Patrick is, again, a generational talent. And I'm not in the business of arguing against Patrick Mahomes, okay? But I do think that, when you talk about all-time great and achievement, he is on that road. And then as a person, as you said, he gave me a lot of time for the book, and he was very thoughtful and he was very open. And I asked him for the book because when George Floyd was killed by police in Minneapolis, Patrick, came out. He was involved in this video that NFL players put out, kind of demanding that the league stand with them more and partner with them more and doing things in their communities. And I said to him, you didn't have to do that, and it really could have hurt your brand. And what he told me is like, well, some things I'm paraphrasing, but what he said was that some things are more important than the risk you take by speaking up. And so when you talk about what type of player he is, generational talent, and when you talk about the type of man he is, he's a type of guy who will put things on the line that he believes are important. And that says a lot to me about who he is.
Jason, you wrote a piece at the start of the season about Jalen Hurts giving people a reason to believe. Can you talk to us about the growth you and others have seen from him on and off the field?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because what I wanted to do was Randall Cunningham. I think people in Philadelphia know who Randall Cunningham is, so I don't have to provide the background there. But Randall was very helpful for the book. I went out to Las Vegas, where he lives, and I spent a lot of time with him. And so I wanted to know what Randall thought about what he was seeing early this season with Jalen, because again, I don't have to provide this background, I don't think, for your listeners, but for people who don't know, at the end of last season, Jalen really struggled in the loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs. And Jalen said after that, hey, my next season starts right now. And the work that he put in, and Jalen's personal quarterback coach, a guy named Quincy Avery, is a friend of mine. And Quincy had told me, hey, this guy, just watch next year, and put in a ton of work. So, I wanted to talk to Randall about what he saw because Jalen got off to such a hot start. And what he said to me was, again, I'm paraphrasing, but that he's given Philadelphia fans, Eagles fans, reason to believe that, we can get to the game, we can win the championship because of what he's doing. And look, I give Nick Sirianni a lot of credit for understanding what he has in Jalen and maximizing Jalen's skill set within that offense. But it's interesting. I heard this analyst who I think he didn't even have Jalen ranked among the top 40 quarterbacks a year ago, and this season I think he had Jalen really down. And I saw him on this I think it was a YouTube show, and the host was like presenting to him, hey, you said these things, and the analyst kept trying to defend it, and by making the point, well, Gardner Minshew threw for 355 yards and a loss to the Cowboys, and it seemed to me just somebody who was really grasping to try to defend an indefensible position, because the host of the show said, yeah, but the Eagles lost both of those games. Like, you can say that yeah, Jalen gets different looks than Patrick Mahomes gets in the secondary because everybody is worried about that zone read game because, Jalen can take off and run. And the host said, well, yeah, but look at his numbers in the pocket now. Look at the fact that they lost both games when Jalen didn't play. And the analyst, again, was just trying to defend a position that currently is indefensible, basically that Jalen Hurts is just benefiting from this great team. Yeah, the Eagles do have a great roster. And the Eagles did a great job. Howie did a great job of putting this team together after the last Super Bowl victory. But to say that Jalen is just a product of his environment, I think is just ludicrous. I mean, Jalen Hurts makes the Eagles what they are. Now, would the Eagles be a 9-victory playoff team? Would they be a 10-victory playoff team without him? Possibly, but they are an elite team with him. So I think that, when you talk about this young man's development, it all starts with the hard work. And look, I get that, you're going to see a lot of single safety high coverages or no safety high coverages with Jalen, because you got to have those safeties up on the line, because with that zone read game, like it makes them almost unstoppable. But that also speaks to what Jalen can do. And here's the other thing, and I know I'm getting long-winded on this, so please just indulge me for a second. You can have no safeties out there. You can have, 11 guys up on the line, but you still have to throw the ball into an area where your receiver can make a play on it. And I think all these people who want to just stick to this narrative that, well, this guy is no good, essentially, and it's just because they're loaded, with talent throughout the roster. I think it's ridiculous.
Before we let you go, did want to ask, there are still only 3 black head coaches in the NFL, yet there are now 5 black team presidents, one of them female. You heard Commissioner Goodell speak about it the other night. What do you think about what he said, the progress the NFL's made, and where they need to go still?
I was at the presser and I asked Roger a question about this. You just mentioned it. There are now 5 black team presidents. It wasn't until a month before the centennial, the NFL centennial, back in 2020, where there were 2 months before, there were no black team presidents. Jason Wright was hired with the Washington Commanders a month before the NFL celebrated its 100th anniversary. Now there are 5 black team presidents. There are now 8 black general managers. Additionally, you look at the NFL league office in New York, there are high-ranking black executives throughout football operations in the league office. Now, I try to make this distinction when I talk to people clearly on the coaching front. And the coaching front is the most visible thing, because who are the 2 most visible people in the NFL? The quarterback and the head coach. So the numbers at head coach, only 3 African-American head coaches in a 32-team league in which 57.5% of the players are black, that's not where the league should be or where the league office wants the league to be. But I do think we need to acknowledge that, look, the NFL does have diversity in a lot of areas in terms of, behind the scenes, not, on the field things. And does it need to get better with coaching? Absolutely. But progress has been made over the last few years in other areas.
Do you think that we've talked to you in the past about this, about how you need to have it from the top, and then the good old boy network kind of goes away, or at least that's the hope. Do you see that happening? Do you see that there is not just the progress in numbers, but the progress in the way that things are moving from top down and from down up.
Yeah, with regard to the team presidencies, the general managers positions, yeah, I do think that. But here's the thing, and I don't even know. I call it a dirty little secret. It's just because it's something that's open in the NFL. Nepotism is rampant throughout the NFL, and the reality of it is, head coaches hire their sons, they hire the friends of their sons. They hire the sons of their mentors. They hire friends of the sons of their mentors. So when you're in that type of situation, it's going to be very hard for people who got a very late head start or a very late start on this to be in the positions where they can make those types of hires. So nepotism is something that's not going to leave the NFL because NFL owners control the NFL, and they're not going to, tell their people you can't hire the people you want to hire. So I think from a progress standpoint in coaching, that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest hurdles. And I don't know how much that is ever going to change.
We know that you have to go. You got a prediction, or what do you think we're going to see Sunday?
Look, I am not a prediction guy. I'm not a gambler. I don't like throwing my money away. Well, let me say this. The Eagles are a better team. With what they can do on offense, both throwing and running the ball, defensively, look, as you guys know, they have 4 guys with double digits in sacks. There are some teams that don't have a guy or 2 with double digits in sacks. They have 4. They get after the quarterback in a way that creates such a difficult proposition for any offense trying to game plan against them, because all of their guys can win, in one-on-one trying to defeat the offense. All of their guys can win. So you can't really, if you double team a guy, hey, they got 3 other guys who can win. So everything points to me to the Eagles winning. But I'll give you this one caveat. I think the only way the Chiefs can win is if Patrick Mahomes has an historic performance. A performance where on Monday morning we all wake up and say, well, this guy is one of the greatest of all time. Anything short of that, I think the Eagles win.
I will take that and leave it there. Jason Reid of Andscape, enjoy the rest of your Super Bowl experience, and thanks for always giving us some time.
Anytime, fellas. Thanks for having me.